Hello there, and welcome to the Bitcoin Takeover podcast. This is season 12, episode 16, and I'm interviewing Mike Jarmuz, or the Muzz. That's the way he calls himself sometimes. And this is going to be a conversation between the best hair in Bitcoin and the second best hair in Bitcoin, but we're not going to tell you which is which and who is who. And we ended up having this conversation after basically I saw a tweet of his in which he said 20 years of how does it go?
20 years of schooling and they put you on the day shift.
Exactly. And that's from Subterranean Homesick Blues by Bob Dylan. And I was like, so you're a Dylan fan? We should do an interview, a conversation or anything in which we just geek out for about an hour about Bob Dylan.
Well, I hope you didn't lose everyone right there. But yeah, for sure. I'm like the biggest Bob Dylan fan on the planet. Maybe you can rival me, but yeah, he's the GOAT. He's the best.
I went to see him in 2014.
It was terrible.
I was super disappointed. I had these very high expectations, but it seemed like he did not even care that he was playing in front of an audience. He was just playing for the sake of it, I guess, but he was not even interacting with his band. He was so absent, as if he did not care. Plus, the show was 2 hours long tops. He knew exactly how long the songs are and when to stop. There was no improvisation, there was nothing. It was very well timed, almost like a business. He collected his paycheck and left. So I was disappointed.
You know, I mean that's kind of par for the course, right? That's everyone who goes and sees Bob Dylan in this day and age, or at least past the 90s. And if you go deep into Bob Dylan, he kind of wants to disappoint you. So if his goal is wanting to disappoint every single person who comes to see him, he really succeeds at it every night. He is the best person in the world at disappointing and letting you down night after night. One of my personal regrets is not seeing him in the 90s, because in the 90s, he still played guitar. So, I mean, I was born in 82, had I been there in like 95 or so, 96, he still would have played the guitar. The songs were more recognizable back then, because now it's all kind of a free for all, except for some of his later stuff, which hasn't changed that much. But apparently the arthritis in the hands has not been kind to him for the guitar playing. So it's almost like you kind of wish you didn't go, because you had that vision of him in your head. I just had that same thing happen with the Rolling Stones. I saw him last year, always wanted to see him, thought it was going to be great, and it was terrible. It was an absolutely awful concert that I just wish I didn't go to, so I could still have this idea of a great Rolling Stones concert in my head.
Oh, I saw the Stones in 2018 after a Bitcoin conference in London, and it was surprisingly good. I mean, they still had Charlie Watts on drums, and I think there was only one moment where Keith Richards messed up, and Mick Jagger was like, "Please start again. Let's pretend that didn't happen." And, it's funny to see their egos at play after more than 50 years of playing together. And you can see them looking at each other like, yeah, you messed up.
Well, the best part of a Rolling Stones concert is the intermission, where they let Keith Richards sing two of his own originals, and like 65,000 people all go to the bathroom at the exact same time, because nobody wants to hear two Keith Richards originals. But yeah,
he doesn't sing originals as far as I know. He sings stuff like You Got Silver, in which he is on the vocals, even on the album. And he also sings Little TNA, which is from the Tattoo You 1981 album. And it's fairly decent. At least that's what he sang when I was around, and people had fun. But I was in Cardiff. I was not in London. I was in Cardiff, and it's a smaller city which has nicer, friendlier people. And to them, it was an event, because the Stones returned after like 20 years to the city to sing for them. So, yeah. Anyway, about Bob Dylan, because that's the main subject of our conversation. And this also happens on the 3rd of January, which is the day of the Genesis block. Mike, you are a VC, and that's how most people know you. And I'm happy that I get to take you out of this role, which people take very seriously, and they all try to be nice to you and maybe pitch you ideas. And that's what your career is mostly about, right? They pitch you when you're at the breakfast table. They pitch you because you're young and able. They pitch you because they're trying to make a buck. They pitch you, and then you tell them good luck. And you sometimes
Wow.
feel so all alone. But, every single VC must get pitched.
Wow, I love it. Okay. For those of you who don't know, that was a great Bob Dylan take on Rainy Day Women. What is it, 13 and 25, I think, if memory serves. That was on Blonde, which was actually the first double album that was ever released. Not many people realize that, but Bob Dylan did do some firsts for the rest of the world. And the first was the first ever double album, Blonde on Blonde. That was pretty cool, man. I do get pitched quite a bit. And it's all good, right? Because some projects, I mean, you get to know everything that's going on in the world, kind of like what you're doing. You get to interview people, you get to learn a ton of stuff, whether it's technical or what they're up to. And getting funding for your Bitcoin startup or idea or project or whatever you're doing is it's kind of a necessary evil. It's part of the game. And just like every industry that's out there, there's bad names associated to everything, right? Whether you're an insurance salesman, maybe you're a lawyer, maybe you're selling used cars. None of these are particularly bad professions or evil industries, but they get a bad rap. And so too does the venture capitalist get a bad rap.
Well, if you sell used cars, they better be from a Buick 6,
Buick 6. It takes a lot to laugh, takes a train to cry. Buick 6. I think that's a Highway 61 revisited reference, but I'm not fully sure. You got me on
It
that.
is. You got it right.
All right.
1965, Highway 61 revisited. It's the one which starts up with that tom tom. It's like a hit, and then you hear the riff from like Rolling Stone.
Yeah, like, was there a cooler person in 1965 than Bob Dylan? Because I actually can't think of somebody who was cooler, right? I mean, maybe John Lennon could rival it. I mean, Keith Richards for sure, maybe a little later 60s, maybe could rival it. But the coolest person on the earth in 1965, hands down, had to be Bob Dylan. What do you think?
Oh, I agree. Like, you have to think about it and put it in the right context, because before Dylan, you can argue that you had Woody Guthrie, you had all of these folk singers who did kind of the same thing, but they were not the same at the same time. If you read his anthology, which is his self-biography, you realize that he was in fact inspired by lots of artists, but nobody did it like him, and nobody taught him how to be Bob Dylan. You can basically do the same type of media controversy interview and make fun of journalists and stuff like Dylan did, but he was a first in his time. He was doing this before everyone else did it, and nobody taught him how to be Bob Dylan. Nobody taught John Lennon how to be John Lennon. And that's what's so cool about them, because they were genuine and authentic. They were not trying to be someone else. They were just expressing whatever they were thinking and feeling at the time. And yeah, that's why they're cool, because there was no concept of a rock star before them. They basically paved the way. They invented what a rock star should be like, should act like, so others could play it safely to some extent after them. I mean, sure, the punks were cool. Sure, the grunge guys were cool, but there's no way you can say that they're 100% authentic and they did not get inspiration from reading Rolling Stone, which was all about Bob Dylan, all about John Lennon, all about David Bowie later, the Stones, and I guess those were the coolest bad guys at the time. Lou Reed later.
So, it wasn't that there weren't rock stars, right? I mean, what we think of rock stars as today, they were inventing at that time, but they certainly had Elvis. Okay. They certainly had, now, if you can call Elvis a rock star, maybe you can call him a pop star. Okay. And Elvis gets a very bad rap, but Elvis did something super important, which was take, blues music and make it okay for like white people to dig it. Like your parents and the kids liked Elvis. It was kind of like transcended a lot of the generations of that time. So I think that they all looked up to Elvis. Maybe I don't know. God, who else? Who else is from that era that could be comparable to Elvis?
Roy Orbison, I guess.
Roy Orbison. But I mean, screaming madness of people. I can't think of another one, honestly. I would say
Elvis was the one driving the girls mad. I mean, you had the generation before Elvis, which was Frank Sinatra, and before him there was Bing Crosby, and before them there were the opera singers who were the rock stars of their time before we had cameras to record their performances, I guess.
That's a good point. You did have a lot of the Rat Pack sort of Frank Sinatra, that singer vibe. I mean, totally different than Elvis, but I guess that would be it. That would be what, probably Elvis's inspiration for a lot of it, right? Is taking it up a notch from what they did, right? Which I guess is what every artist is trying to do. Like you're saying that nobody taught them how to be Bob Dylan. They were still certainly inspired. I mean, every artist has to be inspired by the people who came before him. So for Dylan, and especially in the early years, because remember, he went electric. That was a very controversial, hated move. That's a whole nother topic, right? But in the early, Bob Dylan, I mean, you're talking Pete Seeger, you're talking Woody Guthrie, you're talking a lot of the Dust Bowl sort of, freight train riding sort of songs that hold a story. A lot of people listen to electronic music now, or whatever passes for music that's out there is absolutely terrible. I can't even understand why people would listen to most of this stuff that's out there today and is popular. But, back then, the way you were rated is you pretty much had to have something to say. That's kind of what mattered is if you had something to say of substance. And, if a song can tell such a vivid story, and that's what a lot of I don't understand people who hate Bob Dylan too. I think that's a good thing. I mean, it's kind of a love or hate. You don't meet too many people who are in the middle. And I don't understand why people can hate him. Is it the voice? What do you think?
Well, I guess also the songwriting in terms of composition, because
it's amazing.
For example, if you listen to Blood on the tracks, you can argue that all the songs are in the same key and kind of sound the same. For example, you can think of what's it called? Not If You See For Her, Say Hello. Shelter from the Storm, and what's the other one? That sounds similar.
Tangled Up in Blue?
No, that's the opening one, and it's obviously the most distinct.
Buckets of Rain?
No, that's the last one, and it's actually better.
Okay, wait a minute. Let's go over something. Okay, this is very important. And if you are a Bob Dylan fan...
Oh, you're going to make me lonesome when you go. That's the one.
That's similar, I guess. Okay, first off, about Blood on the Tracks. Now, a lot of people don't know this, okay? But this album was recorded twice, okay? This was recorded once in his hometown of Duluth, Minnesota, and then it was recorded once, I believe, at the CBS studios in New York. There are two versions of this album, okay? So back before Bob Dylan started re-releasing all of the outtakes, which are a lot of my favorite Bob Dylan songs. I mean, that's a whole nother thing, right? The versions of Bob Dylan songs that never came out are some of my favorite Bob Dylan songs, as in like a guy who obsesses. Okay. And they're coming out now, right? Because his new material, I mean, let's be real, but they're digging out all these alternate versions, cuts, very different. Okay. And before they released it, or released a lot of it, I had that alternate copy of Blood on the Tracks. That's the version that you hear at the outro of the St. Vincent movie or Jerry Maguire. Okay, the outro credits. That version of Shelter from the Storm, where it's just the acoustic guitar, that's not a version that was ever released. That's not on the album version. But when you go to the alternate version, right, you even have some different lyrics in Tangled Up in Blue. Okay, a lot of those songs are just killer. And I don't know if you really got into the stuff that they started releasing lately, right? All those alternate versions. But man, there's some freaking gems in there.
I think I stopped a couple of years ago when work became a bit too much. But I should dig into it, because I remember there was a song from the Highway 61 recording sessions. Could you please come out of my window, or something like that? And it was surprisingly good. Like, you would expect that to be on the album. For some reason, it was not. But I guess for years, even I recall reading about Steve Jobs and Wozniak, that they were looking for Bob Dylan rare tapes, and they would just drive to some other city to talk to some guy who's a collector and has some bootlegs from some concert. And they would collect these and see if there's anything good in it. Because there is so much Dylan stuff out there, and you never know if it's any good. But if it might be trash. He might not even try, but if it's any good, your mind is gonna be blown.
Okay, my screen sharing is disabled, but that's all right.
It's all right.
Mom. I was just going to show you one thing. It's really not even
allow you to.
It's really not even
screen.
So, that trend that you're talking about with Jobs and Wozniak searching for Bob Dylan bootlegs, okay, which I imagine would be sometime in the mid to late 70s. So that has been going on forever, okay? And that goes back to two very sought after Bob Dylan records. Okay. If you are a vinyl collector and a Bob Dylan fan, and both, you know about them, because there's one that's called The Great White Hype. I think that's what it's called. The Great White Hype. It's a very rare Bob Dylan bootleg. And then there's another one that's called The Ten of Swords, I think it's called. The Ten of Swords or the Jack of Swords, but I think it's the Ten of Swords. And that's another very rare Bob Dylan bootleg. I think, both of them somewhere at my mom's house. Somewhere in a closet at my mom's house, I have both of these, right? And I think that one of them is numbered, okay? But this was happening forever. Now, these were never printed. A lot of these songs, of course, we're in a digital age now, right? So you can hear the material, okay? But a lot of these never came out, and people went crazy for them way back in the day. Okay. Now then, when Bob Dylan was living with the band in Woodstock, New York, okay, they released, of course, what we all know as the basement
tapes. Yeah.
And that wasn't available forever. For the longest time, you couldn't get it. And this was like the hot thing then, right? I mean, we're talking 68, 69-ish, right? Summer of Love, everything. But this is the talk between like Hendrix and Mick Jagger, Janis Joplin, whatever, is, have you heard the basement tapes? Do you have a copy of the basement tapes? Like, this was the thing that was going around then. It's so cool.
Yeah, I agree. And a lot of people argue that Bob Dylan produced his best material while he was with the band. Even before it was called the band. You get Highway 61, you get Blonde on Blonde. And I'm not sure. No, the next one was not with the band.
Now, this is interesting. Okay. Now, they were always the backup band. But, I think if it was like head against the wall, okay, gun to the head, you can only pick one Dylan record. I probably got to go with Bringing It All Back Home.
Really?
I think so. I think that one for me is just probably the opus. That is the opus of everything, and especially also touring during that time. If you've ever heard some of those live concerts, Live at the Albert Hall was a big release. Some of them are videotaped too that you can see. First half of the show is acoustic. First half of the show is all the old shit. Another
That's
side.
the one with Blowing in the Wind on it.
No, Bringing It All Back Home is right before Highway 61. That's Desolation Row. It's All Right, Mom, Only Bleeding. That's Mr. Tambourine Man.
Oh, Mr. Tambourine Man. Yeah, sorry, I mixed them up. That's the first track on the album.
Yeah, but it's not only that. It's, She Belongs to Me. She Belongs to Me is one of the best songs ever. Man, it's too bad you can't play shit on YouTube and like it gets taken down. Are you kidding me? We could just turn the cameras on. We could have like the best radio show. What the hell? But yeah. And wait, let me just show you this one thing real quick. So after the fact, this one that just came out, this is like a 2018. A lot of those songs that you're talking about is different takes. Tangled Up in Blue, take 3, Shelter from the Storm, take 1. But there's a lot of this stuff. And there's the live stuff or whatever, but man, there's some amazing outtakes of these songs that are just really, really good, man. So I don't know when the last time you went through that phase, right? Like if you go through those Dylan phases where you listen to a lot for a while, next time maybe check out some of these, because there's even some songs that I like were never my favorite. Like Dignity, okay, or like some of those later songs I never liked, but there are alternate versions of those songs that are fucking great, man. Great, Anyway,
I guess I should also mention for the people who are not familiar with Bringing It All Back Home, the album, that one was the transition from acoustic folk to electric rock. I think
that was the first one.
So there is a very harsh song. I think Maggie's Farm is on that one.
And yeah, not a personal favorite of mine. I don't think there isn't a bad song on the album. Maggie's Farm is not my favorite though.
I love the message of it. Like when I stopped working for Bitcoin Magazine, I told them I ain't gonna work for Maggie's Farm no more. I like to reference it. Also, the Gates of Eden is like some sort of, how should I put it? Like he's making fun or poking fun at the beliefs that the people he was trying to please were sharing at the time. He was part of this very left-wing, maybe even communist movement, which was also involved with the social rights movement in the 60s. And he was playing in bars where left-wingers were looking for lyrics that would make them happy and stuff. And he just decided to mock it a bit with this album. And then he went fully electric with Highway 61.
So Bringing It All Back Home is a great hybrid because there's still a lot of acoustic, mellow stuff on there. Obviously, the lyrics are always a 10 out of 10. Well, I don't know about always, right? I can't speak for everything, but with a lot of the pinnacle Bob Dylan, right? The lyrics are 10 out of 10. But like there's still a lot on this album that's like acoustic, right? Like Love Minus Zero, okay? If you've seen the Dylan movie, Don't Look Back, the Pennebaker film, he plays that with Donovan there live, plays on an acoustic, phenomenal, right? Love Minus Zero, absolutely killer, right? Mr. Tambourine Man, acoustic song. Gates of Eden, acoustic song. Okay. It's All Right, Ma is an acoustic song. Good God. I mean, how do you even write that?
Also, It's All Over Now, Baby Blue. That's such a classic for breakups.
Definitely. If you listen to It's All Right, Mom, Only Bleeding, Okay. If you listen to the words of that song, this man is dialed in. This man is connected to all forces of the universe and God and man at the exact same time to write this shit. I mean,
the part that hit me from that song is advertisement signs that con you into thinking you're the one that can do that what's never been done, that can win what's never been won. But meanwhile, all the life goes on all around you or something like that. As if we all think we're special, we all think we're the one, and we get fooled by advertisement that, we get some reassurance from it, but at the end of the day, nothing and nobody really matters. It's kind of a humbling message.
Completely. Disillusioned words like bullets bark as human gods aim for their mark, make everything from toy guns that spark to flesh-colored Christs that glow in the dark. It's easy to see without looking too far that not much is really sacred. Hello? I mean, come on.
To some extent, you can argue that this is a Bitcoiner song. A lot of Bitcoiners are going to listen to the lyrics and they're going to have their minds blown. Like, this guy, has anyone pitched Bitcoin to Dylan?
I mean, somebody's got to pitch playing guitar again first. I think we gotta pitch playing the songs in a recognizable way that would make the crowd excited to be there. That would be a good pitch for him. A bit, but wait, there's one more. You know what? Okay, it feels like Desolation Row should have been on Bringing It All Back Home. Okay. It's like, it's probably maybe my favorite Dylan song ever. Okay. And think about this. You're writing an 11.5-minute song. Okay. That is like 9 verses. Okay. Just 9 verses. No, chorus, maybe there's a harmonica bridge in there for 13 seconds, but that's intense, man.
I mean, think about it. They're selling postcards of the hanging. They're painting the passports brown. The beauty parlor is filled with sailors. The circus is in town. I can imagine that Twitter account Clown World tweeting something similar, but not as concise. That everything is wrong with the world and everyone is a bunch of clowns. I mean, it's so concise and so clear that Johanna is not here.
It's so concise and clear. It's so relevant today. The problem? The problem is nobody would get that reference. The problem is nobody gets the reference, and it doesn't matter, right? I would get it and you would get it. But do most people want to, are they able to do that? I don't know. Is he irrelevant? That's a great question. Are a lot of these things not, we're a little older and we know good music. So when timeless classics and good music, that's another thing. But what does the future look like in, say, 2040? As far as the timeless classics? How relevant are the Beatles? How loved and revered are they, along with Bob Dylan and Paul Simon and everyone else in the world 20 years from now?
That's a hard question to answer. And I can see kids loving the Beatles because they're so melodic, they're so British, and they are a representation of their time in music. But with Dylan, it's a lot harder because you have to understand a lot more stuff. You have to understand the politics of the time, the context, why he wrote that, why that reference is there. And it turns you into a geek. If you're trying to understand Dylan lyrics, you basically have to go through 20th century history just to keep up with his references. And I can see how a lot of the hip hop was influenced by Dylan. And I'm not sure to which extent he deserves credit for this, but he popularized this genre of music where it's not necessarily about the singing, it's more about what you're saying and you're using rhymes to say it. And I can see how rappers were influenced by Dylan.
I never really thought about that in terms of the rappers, but Dylan did always consider himself a poet first and foremost. So I guess in some sort of way, a rapper can consider himself a poet as well. Hopefully he would be a good rapper if he's considering himself a poet. But okay, so you had said if you want to understand Dylan, is going on at the time, and you said his not having a good voice. So, when he was with the Traveling Wilburys, right? Another wildly successful, super fun, short-lived, literally just a fun super group of friends who got together, right? That's what Tom Petty, Roy Orbison, Bob Dylan,
George Harrison, and there is also what's his name from
Beck,
Electric Light Orchestra, Jeff Lynne.
Jeff Lynne. It was funny because I don't know if it was a joke or not, but Roy Orbison, who clearly is the best singer in the Traveling Wilburys, had said that his favorite singer in the Traveling Wilburys was Bob Dylan, right? Or he was, said something publicly like he's the best one of us all in terms of singing, which clearly he isn't. But yeah.
Well, it's not about best, it's just about mass appeal. I can understand how the harmonies of John Lennon and Paul McCartney have a grander appeal as opposed to Bob Dylan's nasal whining. I mean, it's an acquired taste. Even the first time you hear it, you're like, how is this? You listen to like a Rolling Stone, right? Because it's ranked so high on so many charts of the best song of all times. And you listen to that one and you're like, so what's so special about it? I don't get it. And then you try to understand it, and maybe you get it, maybe you don't, but most people most likely will not get it.
Someone who listens to Like a Rolling Stone and doesn't get it probably does not have a soul. They are probably a heartless, soulless, lifeless person that just can't feel what is going on there. And I feel sorry for that person, to be honest with you. And, he said he had 6.5 pages of vomit lyrics written, and that song came to be. And if you do go deep, right, and you like read the interviews or watch the interviews or listen to them of the other people who played on that song, and when it was written, it can even get even more fun. But for crying out loud, I mean, just listening to it, it's sad. What do you think? Is there an excuse for not being able to just get it?
I don't know. If I play that to my mom, she's not gonna like it because her first language is not English, so she does not really understand the lyrics. And she's just gonna say, oh, this is terrible. How is this
really
popular
That's
music?
A good can we go grab your mom? Let's get her in this Zoom call. I want to can she listen to it? Can we watch that live? I think you might be surprised. I think she might dig it. I don't know.
Oh, it's late.
I'm curious
to
hear the results back. I want results back on that.
I can try some other time, but now it's kind of late for calling your mom in Romania.
Yeah. Well, I know that my parents, whose English is their first language, do both appreciate this particular song. But I get your point.
Yeah, someone who doesn't listen to the lyrics or does not understand them has no means to appreciate what Bob Dylan is about. And they're gonna be like, maybe I should listen to Tom Petty because he sounds kind of like Dylan, but in tune.
Well, it's still catchy tune in the 4/4 time. So I think that transcends all languages.
Yeah, so to add up to your argument that Desolation Row might be your favorite Bob Dylan song, I think that mine, I mean, obviously, It's Alright Ma, I'm Only Bleeding has to be the top one for lyrics. But for soul, for the way that it feels, and for the descriptions, I have to go for Sad Eyed Lady of the Lowlands. Because it's a
Wow.
love song, but at the same time, it has such great references. And for example, how does Bob Dylan say, "Girl, you're not a hoe"?
Um, Wait, say that again.
So how does Bob Dylan say what rappers would express as,
Oh,
"Girl,
I
you are not
see.
a hoe"?
Yeah.
Commercial break.
After Mount Gox collapsed, that was really the precipice of me saying, right, this has to change. We need a totally transparent exchanging system and base it on gold instead of fiat.
Voltoro is the hard money exchange which helps you beat inflation with instant swaps between the best stores of value known to man, gold and Bitcoin. Unlike most exchanges, Voltoro understands the importance of transparency and security. All gold holdings are secured in top-tier Swiss private vaults and fully insured against theft, fire, and more. Maximize your purchasing power today by going to voltoro.com/Bitcoin takeover. This is not financial advice, but gold has been humankind's most reliable store of value in the last 6,000 years. Do your own research. Use promotion code TAKEOVER for a one-time bonus of 1 gram of gold for the first 50 new customers buying gold with Bitcoin. Are you concerned that your friends, neighbors, or KYC exchange might know how much Bitcoin you own? It is time to take your financial privacy seriously with Wasabi Wallet, a free and open source wallet solution which makes use of mega coin joins to mix your coins with those of hundreds of other strangers. Thanks to the groundbreaking Wabi Sabi engine, your coins get divided in smaller, untraceable units, which grant you great anonymity for both hodling and spending. Download Wasabi Wallet 2.0 today at wasabiwallet.io and take advantage of the mega coin joins. It's free and it's open source, so don't trust, verify. What are you going to wear when Bitcoin hits $1 million? The same old $20 t-shirt? Try Maison Machi, the designer clothes made in Paris by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners. They're not your average mass-produced sweatshop clothes. Machi will ask for your measurements and tailor every piece of clothing according to the shape of your body, so you always look and feel great in your t-shirt, hoodie, or dress. It's all made in France by real artisans who also happen to be Bitcoiners, which is why Maison Machi only accepts Bitcoin as payment for their clothes. Get a Maison Machi t-shirt or hoodie today. It might even help you find a girlfriend. And once you do get a girlfriend, you can also buy her a Maison Machi dress. Stop having fun looking poor and check out maisonmachi.com. That's MAISON MAACHI.com. Right, so before the commercial break, which was kind of forced because our call ended, I asked you, how does Bob Dylan express the fact that the lady about whom he is singing is not a hoe? And the answer is, so you have the chorus, which is kind of obvious. He says, sad-eyed lady of the lowlands, where the sad-eyed prophet says that no man comes. And okay, that's pretty good, right? But in verse 2, he says, with your sheets like metal and your belt like lace and your deck of cards missing the jack and the ace. I mean, that's brilliant. Sheets like metal, belt like lace, deck of cards, missing the jack and the ace. So there's no other man around her. So she's sacred. She's like this Madonna. And he's writing a song about her. And it's so poetic. It's so nice. I like the descriptions that he's making. And he's portraying this woman as so pure, as someone who has no jack and ace in her deck of cards, basically.
That's a long song too. That's a really cool personal favorite. It's I'm looking it up right now. What is it, 9 minutes or so? 11. Oh my God. That's an 11 minute 20 second song. And the last track of a double record.
It's also a slow waltz. It has that time signature free, what do you call it, quarters or 3/4. I'm not sure what you call it in English, but it's super nice. It's easy to listen to. It doesn't strike you as Dylan trying to belt out high notes, which sometimes can be irritating, like Rolling Stone or something. It's sweet, but it has some of the best lyrics that you can find. I think as a love song, it's super underrated.
Yeah. So as a guitar player, and I don't know if it was a part of your learning how to play guitar or any, significant part of your life, can you play some Dylan songs? Have you learned any? Is that what you started playing?
You want me to bring my guitar and maybe strum a bit?
Well, I asked you a question first.
Yes. I mean, Blowing in the Wind is one of the first ones. No, Knocking on Heaven's Door. That was the first one that I learned from start to the end because it's so simple. It's only 4 chords and you alternate between. So it's G, D, A minor, and then it's G, D, C major. And that's it. That's the whole song. It goes through the same pattern across all parts of the song. The verse, the chorus, they're all the same. And I guess I've learned it because of Guns N' Roses. I was still a 14-year-old trying to be cool, and I was trying to be like Slash. And, what's an easy Guns N' Roses song to learn? Well, Knocking on Heaven's Door. And then you realize, okay, this is a cover. A cover by whom? Oh, this guy, Bob Dylan. Let's listen to the original. And that's, I guess, that was my first exposure to Bob Dylan through Guns N' Roses. And that's something that's left to be said about Dylan, because some people claim that everyone who covers a Bob Dylan song does a better job because they sing it better, supposedly. And at the same time, I can argue that this is great because, for example, I remember being in Italy and I was watching some music television channel, and there was this Italian guy who adapted To Make You Feel My Love by Bob Dylan, which is from Time Out of Mind, his album from 1997. And I was thinking, okay, that's pretty cool. He introduced Bob Dylan to a whole different audience. You can argue that you're not being original if you're covering Bob Dylan, but it's still a great gateway drug into something which is arguably incredibly good.
So Knocking on Heaven's Door is like a 2-minute song, maybe 2:20-ish, somewhere around there. It's such a short song. Okay. From, I think it's a movie, the Billy the Kid, Pat
Garrett and Billy the Kid, yeah.
Which I don't even believe I've still seen to this day. I don't believe I've ever seen that movie, but I know
it's not very good.
I know that from reading,
but it's better than the Ronaldo and Clara one.
Oh gosh, thankfully, I mean, it must have been like over 2 decades ago that I saw that, and yeah, I don't remember it to be very good, and there's no surprise there. But okay, so I know that the producer, after it was over, when he stopped playing, he was like, "Oh, that's it." Like, there's no more. It's just 2 minutes. But congrats to Guns N' Roses for turning a 2:20 Bob Dylan song into like a 5-minute song. You know, it's a heck of a Slash guitar solo there.
Yeah. Plus, there was that middle part where Slash was not Slash, Axl Rose was pretending to talk on the phone with someone.
Oh, you're talking about the music video.
But it's also on the album, I think. Well, I gotta listen to Appetite for Destruction, I guess, when I'm done with this.
Oh, yeah, no, you're right. Wait, I'm not sure if that's on the album version or just in the music video. I don't know. We'll have to see. But yeah. And that also just goes to show you that it doesn't take much to write a timeless, amazing hit. It just takes a G, a D, an A minor, and then a G, a D, and a C. Exactly. And a whole lot of soul and conviction.
And let's also talk about All Along the Watchtower, which is, I guess, the original and best, arguably, cover of a Dylan song done by Jimi Hendrix in 1967 or 1968. And that was not too far from the release of Nashville Skyline, which is the album which includes the song, if I'm not mistaken.
His voice really got a lot different on Nashville Skyline. And you could argue, like, I think he's said before in interviews that he like learned how to sing for that album. I don't know what happened every album after that album, but his voice is noticeably different on Nashville Skyline. And I know he was playing a lot with Johnny Cash during that time. But yeah, All Along the Watchtower is definitely a better Hendrix than Dylan. I'm not sure about the other Dylan covers, right? I would still much rather prefer the Dylan one, but I think I would actually take the Hendrix version. What about you?
Oh, I remember listening to the Hendrix version, and it's so intense. It's so threatening. Like, there's some mystery in the way that he sings that song and the way that he covers it. And there's also that solo, obviously. But when you listen to the Dylan original, it's a bit underwhelming. It's just this bare bones acoustic song. There's not much production to it. That's kind of the gimmick of the album that he released in 1967. And I guess also people at the time were a bit disappointed because Highway 61 and Blonde on Blonde were super produced, super polished. I guess they were using the top-notch recording technology of the time. And then you get something which is acoustic and folksy, like a return to the roots, but at the same time, it's more country than it is folk. And it was different. I guess it was the same kind of impact that happened a few years later with Led Zeppelin 3, which people were expecting to be more heavy metal, more hard rock, but it was more folksy. It's just that I guess sometimes you reach the top of doing something and you try something different just to evolve as an artist and not to please your audience. You know, because what's good is bad, what's bad is good. You'll find out when you reach the top. That's from Idiot Wind.
Okay, wait, you're throwing too much around here. Okay, I love Idiot Wind. What a great fucking song. Okay, but wait, first off, let's do a little revision here. Okay. All Along the Watchtower is actually on John Wesley Harding, which was 1967. Okay. But that is not the illustration of Dylan's weird vocal change. Okay. Nashville Skyline was 69. However, in just touching on John Wesley Harding as an album, I have to tell you This is the one album that should be much more of a favorite, and it's just not for me. Like, this is not one of my favorite Dylan records by any means. Okay, like, it's great. I'll listen to it. It's an awesome record. It's great, right? But not like really one of my favorites. Okay, even Dear Landlord, Lonesome Hobo, I'll Be Your Baby Tonight, All Along the Watchtower, John Wesley Harding, of course. I mean,
The Ballad of Frankie Lee and Judas Priest, which gave the name of the heavy metal band.
There you go. But what's cool here is that Dylan went against the grain of what was popular at the time, okay, through all of these records, but especially like right here, like 67. This is like, everything's colorful. Everything's hippie, colorful, Sgt. Pepper-ish, trippy deal. And he went the complete opposite with many of his album covers, but specifically this one, he said in interviews, was like the anti-Woodstock sort of colorful nature, right? Because it is a terrible looking album cover. Okay, like, I have no fucking clue what this means. Like, the album cover for John Wesley Harding is shocking. Like, what is going on here? I mean, does it depicting a time? It's just an odd picture. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, it doesn't look like something coming from its era. Definitely, at the time, as you said, everything was more colorful, and he took a black and white picture, which looks as if it was applied a sepia tone, a filter. And it's boring when you look at it. You don't have great expectations by looking at the cover, but then you see that it says Bob Dylan at the top, so you should at least give it the benefit of the doubt. It wasn't such a great seller either, but I'm not sure how this compares to other records of its time, because it was certified gold and platinum in the US and the UK, but I'm not sure what this means. And it did get to the top of the billboards in 1968.
With what? That must have been after the Hendrix song came out.
So it seems like he had two singles from this album. One was on side A with Drifters, Escape, and side B, John Wesley Harding. And the second one had All Along the Watchtower on side A and I'll Be Your Baby Tonight on side B.
Well, it says here that the cover photograph shows a squinting Dylan flanked by brothers Luxman and Purna Das, two Bengali bulls, Indian musicians brought to Woodstock by Dylan's manager, Albert Grossman. Behind Dylan is Charlie Joy, a local stonesman and carpenter. So this whole thing makes a ton of sense.
It sounds like something from Desolation Row, right?
Nobody was doing drugs in the making of this album.
Wait, did you read that from somewhere, or were you just stating some ironic fact?
I was just making a joke. It doesn't make much sense, but it doesn't look all trippy. Cool, man. Yeah. Is this one of your favorite records or what?
Which one? John Wesley Harding?
Yeah.
I mean, I just call it Nashville Skyline 10 minutes ago, so I guess that says something.
So
I mean, I like it for what it is.
You're under the same opinion, similar opinion.
But I do like Nashville Skyline. And when I read his book, which was supposed to have three volumes, and he only wrote one and basically scammed the publishing house. So I read that one, and he mentioned something along the lines of being at his house and people were basically bullying him into coming to play at Woodstock, which he did not want to for whatever reason. people associate him a lot with the hippie movement, with the leftists, but he was never really into that. If you look at his interviews and stuff, you realize that he was, I guess he could be kind of a Republican.
You know, I read a lot of that stuff about missing Woodstock. I actually think he regrets it. I think if I remember correctly, he has said that, you know, probably should have went or made some sort of joke to would have probably been there. But yeah, definitely skipping it on purpose to not be a part of that whole thing is definitely a bold move and against the I mean, because come on, you're like the biggest dude on earth right then. He could have walked on that stage anytime he wanted, like literally just showed up. Okay, that's a crazy thing to think about. But yeah, I don't know if you would jump to Republican. Okay, just not wanting to be a part of that. In fact, probably the early folk songs might be, I don't know. You might be a little Republican, the ideals, but also kind of like anti-capitalism, kind of. You know what I mean? These guys weren't really out to make a buck. The people that he was looking up to back then, you know, or in the Greenwich Village coffee houses, I guess.
Yeah, I agree with that. Maybe that the R word was inappropriate in this context.
No, Dylan. It's clear now that Dylan was a Trump supporter. Dylan was a Trump supporter before there were ever Trump supporters. Clearly, that was a joke. Sorry.
Of course, he's the Joker man.
Yeah.
By the way, I want to ask you, what do you think about Disco Dylan? His album Empire Burlesque from 1985, I think.
Probably the low point. I mean, I've heard that some of that Dylan in the Dead stuff can rival it in terms of terrible. But you know, when you start flipping through here, you get to 79, you have Slow Train coming. Okay. Once the 80s come in, that's when you have the Bob Dylan Saved by Christianity. Okay, this is Robert Zimmerman. This is a Jewish man saved with the album Saved, right? So then you've got the whole Christian thing coming in there too, influencing the work. And by the way, there's some gems. There are a couple of gems buried deep in some of these terrible Bob Dylan albums. Shot of Love, another one right after it. Just terrible. 83, Infidels. Okay. You're saying Joker Man. Terrible.
Yeah, I don't like it too much either. But it was produced by the guitar player from Dire Straits, which should have been a big deal. Plus, the picture on the cover looked more badass, and it seems like it was taken by Sarah Lowndes, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, well, listen, because of this, I'm going to give this record another spin. Okay, later today, I'm going to give this one another good listen to tonight, because it's certainly been a while. I mean, look, coming after the past two albums right there, I mean, Infidels is way better. You know, it's just better. But this whole period, you know, Empire Burlesque, God, you know, just these are terrible albums.
Yeah, but there's that closing track from Empire Burlesque, which is called Dark Eyes. And it kind of reminds you of what Bob Dylan is great at. Not with huge production, just good lyrics and an acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
It just makes you realize, okay, this album most likely had a lot of potential when the songs were written. And then some producers said, no, you gotta sound like this if you want to be successful. So you gotta try hard with that tight connection to people's heart.
So for all of these albums that were just mentioned, Dylan was like, okay, I'll write one good song. Okay. Still, I mean, this whole period here is is tough. But I will say this, a lot of these tracks were re-released recently, as in within the past 5 years. And there are lots of alternate versions on a lot of these Dylan bootlegs, the bootleg series that's out, that are 1,000 times better. I don't even know how they didn't get on the album. You know, I don't even know how they ended up with the way that they did when there are some alternate versions that are absolutely great. Okay, so we got Dylan and the Dead. We're in 89. Anyway, oh man, we could just go through this forever, man. I feel like I've been talking your ear off here.
Yeah, I want to ask you also about the more recent albums, like Tempest, or like, what's the other one? Shadows in the Night and Together Through Life, Modern Times.
Okay. So if we're talking modern Dylan, we have to really start with the Time Out of Mind, right?
Really?
You have to. I mean, because that was a great comeback album. There are some of my favorite, one or two of my favorite Bob Dylan songs are songs I love a lot, right? You could almost bring it back to the MTV Unplugged 95. I remember watching that on MTV. I was 13. He brought it back a little bit for that. He played the songs recognizable. It's an awesome show, and he does about as good as a fed up, worn out Bob Dylan can do in 1995 for the MTV Unplugged. And then after that, Time Out of Mind. Okay. Lovesick, great freaking song. Not Dark Yet is like one of my favorites, dude. God, I love that song. That is just such a fucking great. And it doesn't even matter that his voice is shot. You know what I mean? His voice like gets increasingly worse. He's a poster child for smoking cigarettes if you want to sing. For the longevity of your singing career. He's a poster child. But that was a good album, right? And then even better was Love and Theft. Okay. Did very, very well. And the alternate versions of Mississippi, by the way, are even better than this one. But right now we have a resurgence in his career. It's 2001. Okay, Modern Times 2006. That was his first number one in like 30 years. I mean, probably since the mid 70s, I'm guessing. That was a number one album, and I love this album. I mean, this album's great. What do you think? You have beef with this?
No. I mean, what I don't like about it is that it seems like he either got mellow or stopped caring about writing smart lyrics. Because usually you get artists who write love songs when they're in their 20s and 30s, and then they start talking about politics. I guess that's a more natural progression in life. But Dylan did the exact opposite. He started talking about stuff like he was 60 years old when he was actually 20. And then as he got older, when he was 60, he was writing love songs like he was 20 years old, but at the same time, very much aware that he's not young anymore and doesn't really fit into that one. And that's how you get Lovesick. That's how you get Standing in the Doorway from Time Out of Mind. But I don't know. It's just harder to relate to those lyrics, ironically. I guess they get better if you listen to them at a later point in life and you don't care as much about your expectations and you just take them for what they are. But for example, I've listened to Tempest the week that it came out, and that was in, when was it? 2012. I was 20 years old at the time. And I was super disappointed. But now when I listen to it, I don't have any issues with it. I'm fine. I can basically say, okay, this is what Dylan was thinking about back in 2012, and I'm fine with it. People speculated that Tempest would be his last one because Tempest is also the last major writing of Shakespeare. So they speculated, okay, this guy must be dying, but it seems like he is still at it. He released his last album 2 years ago.
Okay, wait, you're covering too much ground here, okay? And unfortunately, I have to go in 5 minutes, but we could talk about this for quite a long time. Okay, so look, let's go back to modern times. Okay, you're referencing those '90s Dylan lyrics and saying, you know, that they're different, right? Which I think it's really, really important that lyrics and words change meaning as you go through different stages of your life. Okay, but in the case of 2006 with Modern Times, these are covers. Okay, these are covers. I'm gonna have to look through it, but Thunder on the Mountain, Someday Baby, Rolling and Tumbling. Okay, he didn't write these lyrics. Okay, these are old jazz and blues songs from the yesteryears, redone pretty much. Okay, that is a lot of this album. Okay. So to say that you don't relate to these lyrics, it's not really Bob Dylan because these aren't really his songs, but I'm with you on the stuff in the 90s. Modern Times was just great. So then after Modern Times, you have the first bootleg series that comes out. Okay. That's in 2008. I love this. Oh my God. If you've never listened to this record, or you have to listen to this tonight. You have to put this on in the background. There are some gems on here. Most of the time, Dignity, Someday Baby, these are fucking great alternate versions, man. Great alternate versions. Mississippi, I mean, this is a great record, right? So this is when it's like, oh shit, what's all that other Bob Dylan stuff that's out there, right? So then Together Through Life, I had high hopes. I was hoping this was going to be good. Beyond Here Lies Nothing is a great song, but no good, right? And again, you've got Jolene. You know, he's leaning on covers at the later point in his life. He's leaning on other things, right? Then he does a fucking, excuse my language, Christmas album. Okay, which is almost unforgivable. Like that's my patience is already tried. All right. Then Tempest. I didn't spend a lot of time with Tempest. I can give it another listen. But what I did spend with it, nothing here grabbed me, I have to tell you. And then he went back to amazing bootleg series, you know, just bootleg series after bootleg series that were great.
Yeah, let me ask you this before you go, because you have about 3 more minutes. Why would you recommend Bitcoiners to listen to Bob Dylan? Why is Bob Dylan relevant for anything related to what we work on every day?
Well, Bitcoiners think different, right? So if everything is different, then you should want to listen to different things, right? And Bob Dylan is different, and his lyrics will make you think, and they'll make you question things, and they'll paint wonderful scenes of visualizations of people and in instances and exchanges and things in your head. Okay, that can also relate to certain times in your life where you may be going through certain things. And some of these words might so eloquently capture your exact feelings, just envelope them so perfectly that it's different than listening to mindless dribble. Okay, which would be like mainstream media news and kind of all these talking heads and the programming and everything else that they want you to think, right? That Bitcoiners tend to kind of see through and navigate in their own way in terms of listening, certainly at the time. Okay, when there is a revolution and counterculture sort of special period, okay, that would be really great if it happened again, like now. That would be just amazing. Okay, and just has that tapped in to where people who know what's up know what's up.
Okay, one last question, and that's it. So Saifedean, if he was listening to this, he would say that everything that's great about Dylan was released during the gold standard, and everything during the fiat era got significantly worse. Would you agree with that?
No, because Blood on the Tracks is 75, and that's one of my favorites. So that immediately cuts that. But I would say this: with the issuance of the 80s and the expanding on the money printing that really accelerated starting in the 80s, now it just got significantly worse.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mike. You can follow Mike on Twitter, and it's Mike Jarmuz, J.
Right. So BTC Prague, we're going to hang out and we're going to listen to a few songs and we're going to geek out hard there too.
Yes, sir. We should do that. Thank you, Mike.
All right. Thank you, Vlad.
After Mt. Gox collapse, that was really the precipice of me saying, right, this has to change. We need a totally transparent exchanging system and base it on gold instead of fiat.
Vaultoro is the hard money exchange which helps you beat inflation with instant swaps between the best stores of value known to man, gold and Bitcoin. Unlike most exchanges, Vaultoro understands the importance of transparency and security. All gold holdings are secured in top-tier Swiss private vaults and fully insured against theft, fire, and more. Maximize your purchasing power today by going to vaultoro.com/Bitcoin takeover. This is not financial advice, but gold has been humankind's most reliable store of value in the last 6,000 years. Do your own research. Use promotion code TAKEOVER for a one-time bonus of 1 gram of gold for the first 50 new customers buying gold with Bitcoin. Are you concerned that your friends, neighbors, or KYC exchange might know how much Bitcoin you own? It is time to take your financial privacy seriously with Wasabi Wallet, a free and open source wallet solution which makes use of mega coin joins to mix your coins with those of hundreds of other strangers. Thanks to the groundbreaking Wabi Sabi engine, your coins get divided in smaller, untraceable units, which grant you great anonymity for both hodling and spending. Download Wasabi Wallet 2.0 today at wasabiwallet.io and take advantage of the mega coin joins. It's free and it's open source, so don't trust, verify. What are you going to wear when Bitcoin hits $1 million? The same old $20 t-shirt? Try Maison Machi, the designer clothes made in Paris by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners. They're not your average mass-produced sweatshop clothes. Machi will ask for your measurements and tailor every piece of clothing according to the shape of your body, so you always look and feel great in your t-shirt, hoodie, or dress. It's all made in France by real artisans who also happen to be Bitcoiners, which is why Maison Machi only accepts Bitcoin as payment for their clothes. Get a Maison Machi t-shirt or hoodie today. It might even help you find a girlfriend. And once you do get a girlfriend, you can also buy her a Maison Machi dress. Stop having fun looking poor and check out maisonmachi.com. That's MAISON MAACHI.com.